So I am truly honored and excited to introduce our first speaker, Charles Antis. He is the founder and CEO of Antis Roofing and Waterproofing in Irvine, California. He started his career as a roofing professional in 1984, and in addition to being a roofing expert and entrepreneur, he has added humanitarian to his long list of titles. He's a proud member of the NRCA and Roofing Technology Think Tank, and is actively involved in the Roofing Alliance and the Orange County Habitat for Humanity. As you can tell, Charles loves inspiring others into doing well by doing good. And here he is to share that message today. So please give a round of applause for Charles and welcome him to the stage.
Good morning. I love Jill Bloom. Greg, I love Jill Bloom. Just gonna leave it like that. And I know that we all do because she's amazing and she's got that energy and she brings people like us together and she lets us know it's okay to have that energy and talk about what we believe in. And today I'm gonna talk about some stuff. I'm gonna tell you some stories that will lead you to some experience that I have and what I believe in. And can we move to the first slide? Oh, I have it. I knew that. I have it. So I'm going to eventually kind of get to something that I'm going to call the currency of social good. And that's kind of hard to explain, but to explain that, I want to go back and tell you something about myself. I have an origin story, just like all of us. Isn't it funny how roofers, we all have a way we got there, and we always giggle? And mine, I'm going to pick mine up about 30 years ago. I had 4 years experience in roofing. The contractor that I worked for didn't have enough work, and I had a few side jobs. And there was that critical moment when I had just enough side jobs that it made sense to continue because he didn't have enough work. And that's how I got started in business. But I had no business plan at all. I just had one skill, and the skill was that I at least told people that I could repair anything that leaks from rain. If you have a leak and nobody can solve it, I'll come do it for free. And then you'll see what I can do, and then you'll trust me, and then that will be how I get work. And that's kind of was my plan. And I didn't have a lot of calls. In fact, I had about 3 calls a week 30 years ago when Antis Roofing was born. And so work one week was making those calls more accessible by putting weather stripping on the home office converted bedroom so they wouldn't hear my daughter cry. And so after I got the soundproofing on the door, I remember one day I got this call. And I got a call from a lady and she had leaks in every room. I was like, yeah, so this is good. So I'm driving out to this place and I'm excited because I'm gonna have leaks in every room, I'm gonna make the money, and I have a mortgage payment to make in 2 weeks, and I'm tight. And I'm driving there, and I'm in a good mood, and suddenly I start getting closer to the area where the home will be, and I'm noticing the homes are getting smaller and more disheveled, until finally I turn on the home where the street would be, and I just see like dead grass and this 4-walled small place backed away from the street. And I'm thinking, that can't be it, can it? But you know, I had to show up and knock because my dad always told me to show up no matter what. And I knocked on the door, hoping it was like not it. And 3 things happened that changed my life looking back today. 3 things happened really fast. The first was the door opened, and I saw this middle-aged lady with a really tired expression on her face. And before I could say hello to her, the second sensation was the smell of mildew. And it hit me like I'd never smelled mildew before. And it caused me to recoil. And I thought, I have to this was like a momentary thing, but it was like flight or fight. I have to get out of here. There's nothing here for me. But as I pulled away, I was shocked by a tug at my finger. And I looked down, and I saw this little blonde girl, about 6 years old, tow blonde hair and an ear-to-ear smile. And she was just stoked because she had a visitor in her home. And looking back at this home, there wasn't a lot of visitors, I'm sure. And she pulls me in, and I had no choice but to go, and she pulls me into this crowded living room, and then we walk into this undersized hallway, and then she turns into her bedroom. And I know it's where she sleeps because she points to this unicorn, like a My Little Pony poster on the wall, and she's proud of it, and she's showing it. But as she's showing me that poster, my eyes are drawn down, and I see 4 mattresses on the floor with mold on them. This is a good story now. It is a good story. I'm going to get there. But right then, at that moment, it was like you were ripping a rib out of my side, because I had no ability in my head that I could help this family, and it was clear they didn't have any money, and I wanted to run out of there. I didn't know what to do. I was shocked. I didn't say anything. I don't even know if I was smiling anymore at this little girl who was smiling at me. But then something happened. The mom walks in the room, and I see that tired look on her face again, and this is when something happened that I don't know if it ever happened like that before, but in that moment, at that time, something came out of me, and I just said, I'm going to take care of your roof. As soon as I said it, I wanted to grab it and put it back in, but that's what I said, and somehow I knew I had to do it, and I walked up on that roof, and they needed a new roof, and I had this great hands that I could repair anything that leaked, so I thought, but they needed a new roof, and so I had to get on the phone and get volunteers, and I did, and I had to go to Home Depot, and I didn't have any great accounts yet. I went to Home Depot, and I remember I got, it matters to this crowd, I got Henry's 203 and Cap Sheet Roofing, and I went back to this very low slope flat roof, and we just double lapped that roof, and it was drippy. It was dripping, but on the outside, it was dripping, outside on like 203 would do on a slope. It was dripping, but what was happening was they were dry inside and they stayed in their home. And so that was a powerful moment that happened to me my first year. Why did that happen? And looking back now, it's kind of like, wow, that's kind of like my doctor on an airplane moment. And it happened 30 years ago, because think of this concept. There's a doctor on an airplane, and suddenly there is a note from the pilot, and he says, excuse me, we have a medical emergency. Is there a doctor on a plane? I think, and I bet you most of you would think, that if you're a doctor, you would raise your hand and say yes. And you would help that patient on a plane, because you had the skill, you had the ability that no one else had. You had the ability. And also, I bet you this, I don't think that doctor that provides that medical service on that plane, I don't think you think that doctor sends a bill for a service. And so this was my doctor on an airplane moment. And I didn't go in easily. I'm not saying here, I had this glorified moment, I heard this angelic choir, I knew I was going to take care of them. No, this was painful. But I went up there, and I got on the phone, and I got these volunteers, because I didn't have any employees yet. And that Saturday, we went out there and we gave them that roof. And then I think that's the thing that happened that I never knew until later. And often life is such that when things happen to us, we don't know what's happening to us. But looking back, that was really profound. Because every time I ran into one of those volunteers, again, I didn't have employees yet, and every time I ran into one of those siblings, because there was like 6 kids in that family, which I did for a while, it was like, hey, high five, like, how's it going? And it was like there was this great moment. So this condition stayed with Antis Roofing. As we grew, we had employees, and then something happened, like, this is what it is. It's like I was struck with this condition, partially because my dad always said to do the right thing, and it was like I could never let anybody have a leaky roof just because they didn't have the money to pay. I'm going to say that again. It felt like I could never let anybody have a leaky roof just because they didn't have the money to pay. And so eventually, that became who we were, and this built into our culture, and it built into our people, and our people started giving high fives. But again, I didn't know it was happening for the longest time. So I'm going to go back further in my life to tell you a little bit more about myself. Now, this is an awesome picture to me because I'm 6'2", the same size I am now. Actually, I probably shrunk a little now. But 6'2" and 140 pounds. And I grew up Mormon. So when you're Mormon, you go on a Mormon mission if you know it's good for you. If you don't, you're not going to marry any of the Mormon girls. So I'm no longer Mormon. I want you to know that. I am a foreman. So So I'm a foreman. But when I was 19, I went on a Mormon mission. And I got to tell you a little bit I got to make fun of Mormonism with all due respect. My parents' religion, I'm just one of those children that broke away from his parents' religion, and that's how I had my journey. But when you're Mormon, you grow up and there's a lot of service opportunities. So, I mean, we're tending beehives, we're clearing brush in the forest to help out. And then this other thing that Mormons do like all the time, and they help people move. And like every Saturday, we're helping somebody move. And I didn't love helping people move. So service to me as a kid wasn't something that I loved. And I went to Thailand because that's where you go on a mission. I didn't want to knock on doors. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to date girls. I was 19. This is my prime, and I'm going to Thailand. I didn't want to knock on doors. And then I got asked to go to Thailand, and I read what it said. Knocking on doors is illegal in Thailand. I was like, yes. So I didn't have to go tell people they had the wrong God. So I thought. And so what I found over there is we did a lot of service. And some of the service I didn't love. I didn't love going to the parks where it was really hot outside and cleaning them. We did that. But I loved teaching English because I was an expert at English, and we taught English. That was cool. So that was cool. And then there was this one day that something happened. And something happened that was really cool. I got up, and there's like 6 or 8 American missionaries that are 19 years old that are living in this house, and this guy gets up and he says, "Hey, Elder Antis," because that's what you're called when you're on your Mormon mission. He goes, "Hey, Elder Antis, we're going to an orphanage today." And I go, "An orphanage? Okay." And he goes, "Yeah, but you're probably not going to like it." This guy was not looking forward to it. He goes, "Yeah, because we're going to go in there, it's going to be smelly, it's going to be hot, there's no AC." And they mix the physically and mentally handicapped kids in the orphanage, and which they do. And it sounded like a really, here goes another not so fun service day. Excuse me. So I walk into this room where I'm assigned. It's about 11 o'clock in the morning. And I walk into this room that's maybe almost the size of this stage, and it's got about 20 kids in there. And I'm assigned in there by myself. And I go in there, and there's maybe a worker there. And as I walk into the room, I see about 20 kids that are apparently waking up from a nap. But as I walk in, there's this one little girl who apparently there was a clown visiting earlier because someone had painted red, rosy cheeks right here. And this little girl, she got up from the floor, and I walked in, and she smiled at me, and she was beautiful. I mean, just this beautiful little, like maybe 8-year-old, 9-year-old girl. And then she did this, like for me to pick her up. And so I thought, okay, I can do that. She was so cute, everything was fine. I walked over to her, and I bent down, and I grabbed her. But as I started to lift her, I was shocked. I was really shocked because, you know, a 9-year-old girl in Thailand who I thought she would weigh like 30, 40 pounds. But as I lifted her up, she weighed maybe 12, 15 pounds, it felt like. And I was like shocked because she had a withered spine. She had spinal bifida, and she didn't really have much of legs or anything to her. And so I was just shocked. And I was like, oh, I gotta put her down was my thought. And I went to do that thing that you do when your neighbor hands you the toddler you don't want to hold. You kind of bounce, and so I went bounce, and I started to pull her off. And those long arms, she put her fingers in my back. Okay, all right. I'm still live in the moment here. I'm still not comfortable. I'm still not really wanting to be at this orphanage at all. And I about 2 minutes later, I'm going to bounce her off now. Bounce, and then 2 things happen. She just looked at me, and she just smiled, like this big smile, like, whoa, what was that? You know, I wasn't ready to take anything in. And then I felt those fingers dig in my back. And it was clear I was not going to set this girl down. And so I just held her there. I held this girl, 19 years old. Here I am in Thailand. I'm wondering why I'm there. And I'm holding this girl in this orphanage. And then something happened to me that day. And this is not a religion story. I want to make that clear. I mean, I'm not saying, but in that moment, and holding her, you know, I grew up in Oregon. In a simple time. I grew up in Oregon, and we didn't have a lot of money, and Grandma cooked on a wooden stove. She had this big pot on a wooden stove. She stirred it with a stick, and it felt like, the best words I can say, it felt like Grandma had a big stick, and she was stirring everything up inside me, because at that moment, everything mattered. At that moment, I was there, and I was helping this person, and I felt fulfilled. And I didn't at the time, that's not what I was feeling. Honestly, at the time, I was feeling it, but I couldn't identify it. It was so foreign to me. Looking back now, I was feeling fulfilled. And so it's good for us to reflect on the past to see where we're going. I keep forgetting where I'm holding this clicker. So how do you get to purpose? And I want to tell you a little bit more about, so I told you a story from my past that was purposeful, because I know you have stories in your past that are purposeful, and I'm telling you they're a great commodity today, because people need to know who you are. They need to know who you are and need to be real. It's not the 1990s anymore. Today, we scream in a world with inauthentic branding. We see people calling who they are or somebody else not what they really are, and so people crave authenticity. So who are you? I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to pivot here a little bit and tell you something that I really believe in. Because I can't pull the value out of what happened to me in my life and why this works until I assess myself. Do any of you have experience with doing self-assessments like DISC, Myers-Briggs, Strength Finders? Raise your hand. Okay, this is good. This is a really good audience. So I'm going to talk about DISC. I think DISC is a great work personalities test. And I'm going to tell you about why DISC is important. I'm going to tell you a story. So DISC says there's 4 quadrants that you could be dominant in. And I'm going to talk about this really simply, and I'm going to compare it to animals in a forest. So DISC, your survival skills in work, are much like an animal surviving in the forest. If you, D-I-S-C, if you're a high D, you're the dominant animal. I will be the alpha. I will be the head lion. I will crush everybody else. That is one way to survive. The second is I will be popular. That's the I. If all the other animals like me, they won't kill me. The third is S. I will stay middle of the pack. If I'm in the middle of the pack, I won't get picked off, which is the most common trait that all of us have, maybe not in this room. And then there's C. C is cautious. This is hopefully your controller. I only travel at dawn. These are the 4 ways that we survive. So I want to tell you a story. I was in my Vistage group, and Vistage is a CEO group, and I took the DISC test for like the first time about maybe 13 years ago. And the DISC test told me that, oh, Charles, you're a high I. All the other Vistage mates, 12 other CEOs, like, you're a high I. You want everyone to like you. And I said, no, I don't. But I did. My whole life, I've wanted to be the center of attention. I didn't know why. And all of a sudden, this test pulls this out. It tells me all this stuff about me. And all of a sudden, instead of being ashamed of it, I realized this thing that I was holding, that I was pretending I wasn't, was actually my power. Because I realized, well, no wonder I'm great in sales. No wonder I'm great in marketing. And no wonder I'm great in customer care, because I care what everybody thinks. So, I'm sorry, I didn't even get loud there. But your personality assessments are so critical. Not only that, there's like emotional intelligence. Who's done emotional intelligence testing? I mean, it made me feel really stupid when I did it, but I really believe in this stuff. And if you find out who you are, it's amazing what you can do. So getting to know who your people are is really important too. When you find out who your people are, you can really empower them to do good. Right here, we're doing habitat work. And I want to talk about habitat for a second. But before I do, I want to tell you about this one other empowerment tool that I did. It's called the Imperative Purpose Lab. It's in Seattle. And in Seattle, they do this thing where they find out what fulfills you. And I want to share this one concept because it's really powerful. Because, I think not only was I a high I and need everyone to like me, but Imperative taught me that we're not all built the same in another way. Like, some of us are great managers, and some of us are great tutors, but really I'm not. When I was tutoring my daughter in school, who's now 21, when she was 12, I was tutoring her in math, and I was trying to get her to get this concept, and she was like in the 5th grade, and I said, Allie, you're going to be the only girl in your class who doesn't get this. That's what I said to her in the moment. I was a miss. It was a big miss. And so I realized I'm not a tutor, and I realized I'm not a great manager. I'm kind of like Disneyland boss one day, and the next thing you know, I'm like that seagull boss where I'm walking around the office flapping my wings and shitting all over everybody. So this wasn't my thing. But what I learned in Imperative, I was with a cohort, and I was with the CEO of Carnival Cruise Lines and their HR director, and this person really nailed me because as I was analyzing myself, trying to figure out what it is that fulfills me, he says, Charles, you're not a good tutor. You're not a good manager. It's not exactly how he said it. But you love to wake people up. You love to ignite passion in others for social change. That is what fulfills me. That's why I'm here today. That's why I said yes to Jill. I was super excited when she asked me to speak because it feels like this is what I'm born to do. And I feel like the time is so great right now. I want to tell you a little bit more personally about me to help you know a little bit more about where I'm going. This is my daughter, my youngest daughter, and my youngest son. They're twins. They're 5 today, and their names are Charlie and Gracie. And this is about a year ago, and what they're holding is the Adopt a Room sponsor of the Ronald McDonald House at Mission Hospital next to the Children's Hospital. And the reason I have this picture is I'm 57 years old and I'm divorced. I was divorced. I'm not divorced today. And I fell in love when I was 50 and it was so awesome. I loved my wife and it was great, but she didn't have kids and I was going to have kids again. And I got to tell you, I was really scared. But I did it. We got pregnant. I had to go see a fertility doctor. I don't want to talk about that. That's a talk I don't want to give today. But my wife is pregnant, and I love my wife, and she's pregnant with these twins, and she's so healthy. And then we're like almost 8 months. We're 7.5 months pregnant. And then she wants to go on a baby moon, which is cool. It's like a little weekend before things get serious. And we go on this baby moon in the desert. We come back the next day. And then everything changes. She gets sick. We go to the hospital. The doctor says, go to a room. We go into a room. Within 12 hours, there's 4 doctors assigned. One for Charlie, one for Gracie, and one for my wife, and one for me. And I watched this thing take place. A cesarean birth, which is rough, and I understood why they had me sit down. But then something happened that totally changed everything for me. I watched them pull Charlie out, and Charlie looked like a little old man, and I didn't want to show you that picture because I don't like to look at it. And Gracie looked like she couldn't breathe, and they couldn't breathe. They were putting tubes in their nose, tubes down their throat, and they were putting tubes everywhere, and they rushed them up to the NICU, and they put them into an incubator floor with about 50 other babies where there were bells and whistles going off at every moment where you wonder if your child's going to be okay or not. And so we went from this really happy period to suddenly I'm driving to the hospital, which is a half-an-hour drive, twice every day with my wife. We're not talking a lot because we're worried about our kids, and we're going there to do skin on skin. Let me tell you what skin on skin is. The CHOC nurses, which is the Children's Hospital Nurses of Orange County, they told us that if you come in and you take off your shirt and you lay Charlie and Gracie on your chest twice a day for 2 hours, it'll help them heal. And they'll be able to come home, and that's all I cared about. So every day we would drive and we would do this skin on skin. And I had this little this thing that occurred with Ronald McDonald House. So as I go into the hospital and to go into the children's unit every day, I would pass by the Ronald McDonald Station. And the Ronald McDonald House Station consisted of 2 beds where you could spend the night, and stations, work area, coffee. And every day when I'd walk by, if the attendant was there, they would say, hello. Hi, come stay in the bed if you want. Have some coffee. And you know what I did? I said, no, thank you. In fact, looking back, I'm a pretty nice guy, but I was not in a nice mood. And I remember it really clearly that when I saw those people and those other parents, I didn't associate them with as much as I should have. In fact, I didn't want to talk to that station attendant because I didn't want to be part of the Sick Kids Parents Club. I just didn't want to. That was not in my thought at the time, but looking back, I didn't want to be here. But one day, I'm driving to the hospital to go do the skin on skin with my son so he can heal, and my wife was going to do my daughter Gracie. But as I got there, I started having this thing that's embarrassing that I get. It's like acid reflux. When I get acid reflux, it can be so bad. Maybe it's the nerves of running a roofing company that causes that. But the acid reflux can be so bad that sometimes I can't do anything. And so I was really threatened, like, oh my God, this was the most important thing in my life at that moment, and I couldn't go lay near my child. And so I walked out, and I went by the Ronald McDonald Station, and this time there was no attendant there, and I'm glad there wasn't because I might not have asked for anything. But I looked down, and I saw a little green Nature Valley granola bar. You know the little green Nature Valley granola bar that's been around since we were kids? Well, I justified in my mind that probably cost them at Costco like 20 cents, so I grabbed it. I didn't want to owe them anything. But I ate that bar, and I went in, and the GERD settled down, gastroesophageal reflux disease. Don't ever use that in a talk. It just doesn't sound well. But I laid Charlie down, and I had that 2-hour session, and I started to get it. I started to get why this is so important. And then I started to get it more after my kids came home. As you can see, they're 100% healthy, and that doesn't work out for everybody the same in there. But eventually, I became friends with these people and friends with these other parents, and I have this amazing network. But as I got more involved in the Ronald McDonald House, it happened because I was giving my first talk. Like, I love to talk today, but 3 years ago, I was just getting my nerve up, and I spoke at the don't think about safety picks. This is like, don't even think about this, because there's probably this, you could find a lot of fault with this picture. Let's not talk about the fact that there's no safety harnesses there. But I went out to do a talk, and then the local house rep came up to me, Susan Kinney, and she said, "Hey, Charles, we need some help there." And I started getting involved in Ronald McDonald House, and found it was really cool. And I found it was really cool because they needed all these things. I really got them modeled in, it's all about keeping the families close to their kids when they need it the most. And I started to get it. And I started saying, well, hey, if we keep families safe and dry, can we keep the house safe, dry, and close to sick kids? Like, yeah, we started doing it. And that's when this picture was taken. And the newspaper came up there, and we started doing it. And all of a sudden we realized, when you do social responsibility, it feels like don't let the left hand know what the right hand's doing. In fact, as I talk about social responsibility, a lot of times, baby boomers, people my age, they say, I'll give a roof, but I don't want to talk about it. But my job is to tell them, if you don't talk about it, how's it going to grow? And so we started talking about this, just like we started talking about habitat roofs. And we started donating all of the habitat roofs locally 10 years ago. In fact, we hit a milestone this year that we've donated $1 million in Orange County habitat roofs, all of the roofing over the last 10 years. But I got to tell you, when we started doing, and that's been wonderful, thank you. And it's something we talk about a lot. If you follow Antis Roofing, and I encourage you to follow Antis Roofing because we have to share ideas and how we talk about it, but we talk about the habitat, and it lifts our brand, and it helps people trust us, because everybody that trusts us about habitat, you know why they trust us? Because they know that we believe that everyone needs a decent place to live. So having that brand next to you. But Ronald McDonald House, when we started serving there, you know what Ronald McDonald House people believe? They believe that it is unimaginable to ignore sick children. So I have these brands next to my name, which I'll talk about a little more initially. But we found out that not only could we do this, but when we talked about it, we could do more. And so another thing that happened, which is really profound, is around the same time when I'm getting involved in the Ronald McDonald House, I'm also getting involved in the NRCA. You know, I've heard about things like this. I've always heard about Best of Success and how attracted the best and the brightest, those that want to do the most. But NRCA was coming up. It was the year of Orlando. And I thought, I'm going to go there early because there's a rebuilding Orlando. And I'm going to go there early because I'm frustrated in my local market. I want to find the purposeful people. It was a brilliant plan, one of the best plans I ever had. Because I went back to Orlando. And when I went back to Orlando, what I discovered was, at this build, that a lot of purposeful people showed up. I'm not going to mention names because I'll leave people out, but there's some of you in this room were here. But you all led me to the NRCA and to the Roofing Alliance. At the time, the CEO of the NRCA was Bill Good, and I'm a big fan of Bill Good. And Bill Good just blew my mind because he's a good guy. And I know that many of you know him because he went around interviewing contractors, and he's built so many legacies of doing good. And he told me some interesting stuff. He goes, Charles, we need something that lifts the roofing industry. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, and he told me some stats I didn't know, and these are directionally correct at the time. Counting all of the startups that fail, 3 out of 5 roofing companies that start up will be out of business in 3 years across the country. Like, wow, really? And it's the only trade that hasn't recovered from pre-recession margin. Wow, really? I can feel that back home. And when he told me all this stuff, he also said there was over a 50% attrition rate. And said, we need something to lift the roofing industry. And I thought, this is great. I have all this experience, and I'm so excited, and I want to get involved. And while I'm a member of the NRCA board now and a member of the Alliance board, at the time I wasn't, but I was excited, and I said, Bill, this is good. I mean, I know what we can do. We can donate all the habitat roofs. And I was super excited, because I donate all of them locally, and we can do this. And it was like he quickly reminded me of the challenges in that. While Habitat's an amazing organization and we help out everywhere, we can't get our hands around that because that would be like $1 billion in roofing. And he was right. And so I was still excited that the NRCA was asking my opinion, and we have the advantage on the West Coast of having great reciprocation when stories get out, like Disneyland will comment, or Edwards Life Science or PIMCO Foundation, which are housed there, they'll comment. But I'm still trying to punch these ideas. And so finally I set up this prospectus, and I sent it to Chicago, and I had Allison LaValle and Bill Good. We had this conference call, and I had the idea, and I wasn't here yet. The idea was, I pitched it. I had Corey Burnham, my marketing manager. He said, I got it. You guys ready? Every guy in the country, all 300,000, we're going to grow our beards, and we're going to do Movember. And it was like crickets. Movember. It didn't work. Nobody cared. Nobody wanted to do Movember because they didn't get it, and it wasn't real. And I lost my heart then. I remember when I hung up on that call, I actually just kind of let it go because, she stopped talking because she didn't understand the concept, and we let it go, and then I kind of gave up, and I thought, well, maybe I don't have the right idea. And then just a week later, I hadn't let go of the concept or the idea. Susan Kinney came to visit me again at this house. And she had just got back from the International Ronald McDonald House, where she had met these amazing people, and she was super excited. And then all of a sudden, in that room, we started brainstorming. Like, how many Ronald McDonald Houses are there? 165. Wow, that's a doable number. Wow, I wonder if we could re-roof them all. And she gave me the number of the international spokesperson for Ronald McDonald House. I called him. I go, hey, what do you think? And he was like, it was a little bit crickets, but he said maybe. And then I called Bill Good, and Bill Good said, yeah, maybe. And then I waited, and then some really cool stuff. I went about 6 months, and I went to the Roofing Alliance meeting. And if you don't know what the Roofing Alliance is, the Roofing Alliance is the philanthropic arm of the NRCA. And it's the most awesome thing. Since I joined the Roofing Alliance, I can see and do so much more. So we go to this meeting, and I'm in this meeting, and I watched all these 70 or so roofers in the room as they showed this Ronald McDonald House video and this family that's able to stay close to their kid. I watched this all, and I was one of them, just wipe our eyes as we cry. And then we raised our hand and we voted. For the first time in 130 years of our trade association, the NRCA, we have our first ever nonprofit partner. And then, about 4 months ago, a year and a half later, Red Roofing in Salt Lake City adopted the last house, and now we have, across the country, thanks to you, over 200 companies have adopted all 165 Ronald McDonald Houses, and let's give ourselves a hand of applause. This is really exciting. It's really exciting because we have these things that we show up for, and it really matters. And you can see trends happening across the country where we're really doing a lot more together. And I want to talk about this. I actually went to my office and I said, I want a picture of hands. And all of the techs that everybody was office workers, and we didn't have the old live scars, didn't have any busted nails because everywhere else out in the field. But you know what? I want to do this picture because I used to be ashamed of my hands. I got to tell you, when I entered the roofing industry, my brother was a college grad. I just needed a skill at the time when I was in California. I needed a skill, and the only skill I had was labor, and the only job I could find was roofing. And this is, I was ashamed a little bit. I actually would tell people sometimes, I would say, roofers is the second lowest job satisfaction next to ditch digging. That was my brand. But I don't see it that way anymore. I don't see it that way. We have an amazing industry, and it's not the same. 5 years ago, I was jealous of my friends that had a store. But my friends that had a store, they're gone. And they're jealous of me because I have a trade. And I look at these hands, and I see it differently. When you see me when I talk, I use my hands a lot. I'm very proud of my hands. And I'm really proud of this industry. I mentioned Bill Good before because he's a dynamic leader and he's a heck of a great leader. But we have a great leader here today, and I think he's here at this conference, I know because he's speaking tomorrow morning, and that's Reed Ribble. I mean, Reed Ribble is a great leader. I remember when I heard, and I was just getting involved in the board, I was just joining the board, and he was coming on. But I didn't meet him yet, and Bill Good was telling me about it, and I was excited to meet him, and then he was on like this Harley ride across the country, and I thought, Harley ride, who is this guy? I didn't know I was going to love him, and I wanted to love him because I was really getting involved in the NRCA. And then I met Reed, and Reed spoke to us when he first took on this leadership role as CEO. And when he spoke, I remember I got goosebumps. Does anybody get goosebumps when Reed talks? Yeah, I do. Reed Ribble is an amazing leader because he's really what this roofing industry is about right now. I kind of butcher it, Reed. If you're here, I apologize. But man, you really go to three things, and I just want to talk about it. These are important things to get involved with. You are all about advocacy. Advocacy. We show up, one voice in D.C. I mean, how many of you show up in February in D.C.? Raise your hand if you showed up in February March on Washington. Thank you. I mean, because of you, we are being listened to in Washington. And thank you, Reed, for that. I mean, when you said that, I didn't believe, I didn't know, but now I don't doubt you. And Reed is also really working on education certification. This is a long-term project, and we're all in, and this is going to lift our industry. But we're also equally focused on philanthropy. This partnership with the Alliance and Ronald McDonald House truly lifts who we are. And I want to explain it like this. We're moving into a different world. And it's a world of a currency that's different. You guys hear of cryptocurrency, and I'm not going to explain what cryptocurrency is because I don't understand it. I really don't understand cryptocurrency, and I don't think, when people that claim to understand it explain it to me, I think, I don't think they really understand cryptocurrency. But I'm telling you, the currency of the new world is social good, and I go a little weird, and I might go a little weird here, but it's all about who you do. I mentioned earlier, I'm aligned with Habitat, so when people see me, not consciously, subconsciously, they align me with Habitat. What that means is they know, like them, if they believe that everybody deserves a decent place to live, then it creates more trust. And the way I can explain this better is to go to the other end. Have you ever known somebody who's gone to prison? I have. And this person told me, and it's more than once, is that he went to prison, he had to join a gang. I know it's weird I'm talking about prison, but it makes the point. Bear with me. And what do you mean you have to join it? You don't have to join a gang, you don't go to prison. Absolutely you do. If you go to prison and you're not affiliated with a gang, you're a threat to everyone. And until you identify with a gang, the system's not in order. Once you identify with a gang, you're relatively protected. Well, I'm here to tell you that the same rules, the same prison rules of gang association exist in society today. But you're probably not going to get shivved with a knife, so it's a little safer, but it's the same thing. You are your brand. You are aligned with who you're aligned with. And so it's critical that you get involved. Get involved. Be involved. It is so critical that you find that thing that fulfills you and go in all the way. And so I'm very involved in the NRCA because I believe in it. I believe in it with all my heart. And I'm very involved with the Alliance because when I went to that meeting in Orlando, members of the Alliance came up and they said to me, Charles, how's this industry been to you? And I said, it's been good. And they said, then give back. And I said, but that's too much money. I can't donate that. And they were patient with me and they said, I bet you can. And you know what? Man, my life is completely different today because I see things big and I show up and I believe that anything is possible. I believe that there's a lot that we can do in this industry. And I believe that when I look around this room, man, I'm going to go back to the slide before because this slide before nails it for me. I see you guys and I see big, strong hands. And when I look around this room, I see broad shoulders. We can take a lot. And I also see the thing that I love about this industry is the biggest heart. All I'm telling you is it's really important that we organize and we talk about it. I want to invite you to get involved and to get involved with us when we go to Washington for Roofing Day. I want to invite you to get involved in things like pro certification, but I also want to invite you to get involved with all of the local people at your local Ronald McDonald House. And I want you to learn to talk about it. Talking about the good that you do is really difficult because it feels like you're not supposed to. But if you don't talk about it, how's it going to grow? So I'm gonna leave some time for questions because I love to talk about questions that'll get more to maybe how we do some of this. But I would say, I leave you with this. It's really important. First of all, what's the final thing? Jill says, you better come up with 3 things at the end that you're going to nail him with. But it's like, I have a lot of things I come up with. But first off, I would just say, who are you? You know, you need to know who you are. What is it, that thing that fulfills you? And get involved. Get involved. I think that we can change our communities in everywhere we live because we are the ones. We're the ones in any weather. It's you that's up on that roof. You're the superhero that goes on that roof when no one else will go. And you're protecting everything in this country that matters most. You're protecting the kids, the children. You're protecting the boat. Everything that matters to everybody, we're the ones that protect it. Thank you for all the good that you do. Do we have any questions?
Charles, when you're coming up with these philanthropic ideas, do you get other people in the company involved, or is it just your idea?
Thank you, Greg, for asking that question. So I got to tell you, it used to be just my idea. And you know what the problem was? I was like, in Old School, that movie, Will Ferrell, remember when he's streaking down the road, like he's running down the road and his wife comes up and says, hey honey, what are you doing? I'm streaking, come on, everybody's doing it. I mean, it was all me and nobody else was involved. So there's a way to do this, and you have to survey your employees. Let me tell you a really quick way that I really learned to do that inside out. Well, on top of doing habitat builds where we bring people out, that habitat may not be the thing that fulfills your employees. So one of the ways we did is we gave away these giving cards. And a giving card is a gift card that can only be redeemed at a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. So I'm giving you a $25 gift card. You can't spend it, but you can donate it to Habitat or Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever nonprofit you want. When you do that, and your people share within the organization who they gave it to and why. Say you're at an all-hands-on-deck meeting, you give it to your director of production. He, the next week, comes back and he goes, this is who I gave it to. And he explains, I gave it to American Cancer Society because, and then he gets emotional. He talks about his aunt who maybe had cancer. And all of a sudden, production is trusted by customer care where they didn't trust each other before. So, and then all of a sudden we listen collectively and we know who we are. So it's a great question. It takes a long time to get real, true, living philanthropy. But to have real, true, living philanthropy, it has to be true to your people and true with your stakeholders. Like, I'm not up here with a mad sticker next to me. I'm not, no knock on Mothers Against Drunk Driving. If I had 1,000 people here and I was serving alcohol, I would have MAD sponsor that event. But you really want brands that align. So Habitat for Humanity makes sense. They're providing homes for people. We donate the roofs for Habitat for Humanity. It makes sense when we tie into. I'm sorry. I'm running that too far down. Let's save for another question. Did I answer that okay, Greg? Okay, thanks.
We have a question from the online audience.
Okay.
How do you vet the nonprofits you partner with?
Boy, that's a great question, and I wanted to get into that more. So, okay. It's really important, like I said, that you align with the right people. Let's look at 3 things that are really critically important. This might be the cause that fulfills you, it's you, but if they don't have a great CEO, like a really great ED, executive director, CEO, whatever they call, man, you got to stay away. And you better look at the board. You can get involved, you can donate a day, but don't join the board. Don't look at the board and say, who's on the board? The people on the board have to be functional people in your society, people in your community that have something you want. I'm not talking about money, but generally they're successful, but they have the traits you want. And you got to look at the staff. These are 3 critical components. And after you have those things, they have a good staff, they have a solid ED, and you're aligned. Then you got to make sure it works with your alignment. Like I mentioned earlier, it has to align with your brand. Does that sort of answer that? Oh, it was the online person, so I guess you can't ask. Anybody else?
Yes.
Yes.
Deciding to give to an organization, whether it be time, money, or resources, is very personal. Do you also encourage the people that work for you to volunteer at whatever organizations they might support? And if you do you compensate them in some way for doing that? Do you reward their activism?
Yes, in continuation of Greg's question too, yes. So, for example, we give up to 2 days off to donate 2 full days to the nonprofit you love. We also do a dollar match. We match up to a certain amount. What else did you ask? Yeah. We have to be very involved to get them to, it's really hard to get everybody involved, but if you get everybody involved, they stay. I didn't mention at the end of my talk, but we're in an industry with a very high attrition rate. The last 2 years we've tracked our retention rate. It was 93% 2 years ago and 91% last year. So it makes a tremendous difference in your people. And by the way, philanthropy used to be an outside play for me. It used to be like, I'm doing this because I feel like it and it's outside, but it really has to resonate inside. It just doesn't work unless it resonates. So you're not listening to your people, it just won't work. But if you're listening to your people, it's amazing what you can create in your community. And I have to talk about it. I do this and I cry when I talk about it because it's real. And if you don't feel sincere, you're normal. If you don't feel sincere, like you can't do it, I gotta tell you, compassion and empathy is like a muscle. And if you're on a board, and I'm on several nonprofit boards, if you're on the board and you hear these things, it's like you feel sometimes inauthentic. So some of you don't want to talk about it because you feel inauthentic. But if you're really doing it, try to talk about it. Even if you're clumsy, it's going to lift your brand. In fact, one of the things that hurt me is Habitat started talking about us 10 years ago, and they said, Antis Roofing, donating roofs, transforming lives. And I was like kind of bold. I don't think I could say that. It felt kind of blasphemous initially. And then one of my competitors said something like, yeah, that's a gimmick or whatever. And then it got back to me, and then I realized what happened. Even though we were clumsy in the way we were talking about it, that was pretty awesome, that line, donating risk, transforming lives, but it was kind of bold. And we were clumsy in other times. What I realized, if you're really doing philanthropy and you're trying to talk about it, it's what makes you stand tall, because when the person criticizes you, everyone in the room, they don't necessarily tell them, but all of a sudden from that point on, they notice you. And if you're really doing it, they become your stakeholders and they start believing in you.
We have a question in the
Yes.
back.
You answered the last question, Charles. But I have one. What's next for you? What's next for Antis Roofing?
Wow, well, so, I spend a lot of time speaking because this is what I love to do, and I don't spend as much time running my company as I should. Maybe, you could say that. I have no regrets. So one of the things that's happening for me right now is I was spending about 20% of my time in the company and a lot of my time out igniting passion in others for social change. But I realized I needed my history knowledge in the company, so now I'm spending about 50% of my time in the company. So that's exciting to me because, you learn a lot when you fail. And one of the things that I love about, you ever heard that expression that the more you fail, the more you know? I think in the roofing industry, we're really able to learn that because, no matter how many jobs you have, you always have a turd here and there. And those turd jobs are where you really learn from. And so, yeah, I love to fail. I love to fail fast. I don't know how I got on that topic. Sorry. Anybody else?
Hi, I was just wondering if you could speak on any challenges you had in the beginning with getting your staff to buy in when you were starting your journey on social good and how you overcame that.
Yeah, well, I talked about some of it, but I remember, let me give you some examples. Like when we started doing more Habitat roofs, it was like I didn't want to tell everybody because I knew they wouldn't be happy. Like, to my marketing director, it usually meant more Saturdays that he'd have to work. And so that was a challenge. And then to I remember my director of production at the time was like, there's more jobs to run, but less organization because it's out of the norm, and we're not getting paid for it, so it causes stress on them. So I think that was the biggest challenge, is to get people all in on it. I think that I had the ability a little bit to be somewhat of a futurist and see the value of social good, knowing that we would be trusted more if we could get the story out there tastefully. But it was really difficult to convince your people of that. And to this day, it's still a challenge. It's really hard to find that balance. I can tell you two things about philanthropy, though. No, I'm not entirely answering your question, but when good philanthropy in business, and I'm not talking about philanthropists like I'm this billionaire, because I'm not, that gives away a lot. I have more of a Tom's model, and that means that as you grow, you're giving, and it creates trust in the community. But good philanthropy feels much like it did that very first time when I walked in that home when I smelt that mold. It felt impossible to me. And so one of the things that I tell people is, it still feels that way, but I've learned this trick. I've learned this model, I'll say it that way. I've learned this model. When somebody comes and gives me a request, hey, we need this roof, it's only 10,000 square feet or 100,000 square feet, and they have no money for it, and it's for a nonprofit. I've learned that I just do this. I don't say no. I may not say yes, I say some form of a maybe. And there's something powerful about saying maybe, and I don't know why it works. I don't get into why. I don't get into how. I just know my story. By not saying no, things align, and people show up, and next day somebody calls and they've got the product, and all of a sudden you're able to serve this much more amazing capacity. So it's a really interesting experience that I have with philanthropy. Yes?
Jeff, Music City Roofers in Nashville. I want to resonate with you as an owner. Stepping into it, you kind of feel awkward because you're the Lone Ranger, but we have a theme, covering your home and family for life.
Say that again?
Our theme is covering your home and family for life, and it's real and authentic. So we're now raising up support to build a youth center because our young generation is at risk, and there's so much injustice in the world that we can be a justice. You know, it's threats of terror, there's all sorts of negative stuff, but we get to touch the lives of all these people we serve, and it's just such a good, blessing feeling, you know, to do that. So you can't help but give back. So I just want to say, I applaud you for that, what you're doing, because it's a bigger thing than what I'm doing, but I'm doing it in my little hometown, and it's becoming known.
I love that motto, and so I'll tell you, just to riff on that. So our motto is, what's our motto? 30 years, protecting families, keeping families safe and dry. So we exist. We know why we exist. Like, you know that Simon Sinek thing, what's your why? And I joke about this all the time because I talk about what's your why all the time. And some days somebody asks me, what's my why? And it's like, F off! What are you talking about? It's hard to say, but it's all about why you exist today. We have to get to that. We have to think about that. And so when you call our office and you have a leak, everybody in the office knows we exist to keep families safe and dry. So if you call and someone picks up the phone, they're empowered to make a decision. And it's not all about getting paid yet. That comes later, but we don't get paid on everything, and some of that goes with our blessing. And it's a great time to be that model. It's not a good time to be the model of 10 years ago. Things are shifting quickly. And if you're not really focused on people and an inside out, putting people first and not reinvesting. I remember the days when I first started in this trade, all the big roofers, man, they had the big boats. And I'm not saying, I know some of you have big boats and that's okay, but my point is it's more so than ever a time of reinvestment, not just roofing, in all business. I have a friend named Dallas Imbodo from Big Rents, and Big Rents has the second largest rental facility across. It's an online presence. And we were out to lunch one day, and he gave me this. He's 31 years old and a billionaire, and he said, Charles, does your company make a profit? And I thought, well, are you kidding me? I wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have known each other. And then it hit me like, oh my God, the newer mindset is 100% reinvestment. 100% reinvestment. That's the only way you know that you're going to be relevant in the new world. And my investment is in my people, and it's in technology and all that we're doing. That's why we're all here. But it is also in the community. And I can tell you, I give too much sometimes. I mean, last year we gave away 5 points, and we made way less money than we did before, the year before, and our give was bigger. And so maybe it was a little too much on externally, but the fact is we're pioneering, we're trying to find this new balance. And you know what? I've just never seen really hurt anybody by giving too much. I haven't seen that. I'm sure you might know stories, but for me, it's been a real blessing to get more and more involved. So I think we're about out of time. Or do we have one more? Okay.
Time's up.
Thank you so much. Call me, email me, follow me on social media.